the first several weeks I had trouble sleeping. I couldn't fall asleep. My mind wouldn't stop. That sense has improved a lot. But yeah, it's been very emotional. I think we haven't had as much hope as we have now in a long, long time.
It's been a whirlwind few months for Brad Bradley. Back in July, the Chesterfield man sat down with us to talk about the mysterious disappearance of his sister aboard a cruise ship in 1998. Ever since the release of a Netflix docuseries about Amy Bradley, the family has been bombarded with tips, sympathy, and offers to help, but also some harassment. Now, Brad is back in the Untold studio to provide an exclusive update on what has developed since he joined us last. Brad, thanks for coming back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me back.
How you doing?
I'm all right. A little tired. Been a long day, and usually I think our first interview was I wasn't at work, so I was a little bit more refreshed feeling, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah, you're juggling a lot of things.
Yeah.
So the documentary and all of the interviews that have followed have definitely stirred up a lot of conversation / tips. Tell us what that's been like. What's the volume of kind of dialogue on this now?
Well, the volume of tips is a bit overwhelming. It has, I haven't counted them, but there's between the email tip line and the phone line, it's thousands and thousands from everywhere, and we literally have 2, maybe 3 people manning all of those things and separating them into subcategories and important versus not and all that kind of thing. So, there's a lot that's happened. There's a lot of things that along the way through social media, people bringing up things or sending pictures or, different questions that have since been ruled out. And there's a lot of things that are going on right now that I can't speak on directly, but we're working on several different things that are credible enough to need to follow out.
Be investigated.
Yeah.
Prior to this documentary airing and you having these conversations, how can you compare the level of, conversations in your day that involved Amy from then to now? Are you sort of constantly on the phone, constantly taking text messages? It's kind of like, are you getting bombarded?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just to give you an example, today, aside from seeing patients all day and working since 7 o'clock this morning, I've been on the phone with an ABC Hulu producer who is requesting a new documentary style show in short order. So we're dealing with that. I spoke with the Director of External Affairs with the Attorney General Jason Miaris' office today. I spoke to my mom about 4 or 5 different things that are happening today. I spoke to an individual who we are working with now in a different capacity as far as an outside authority that I can't speak on here. So yeah, I've had about 5 different things. I spoke with Representative McGuire's aide just before I showed up here today about some help that he's planning to give us. And
you're running out of hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you feel good about that?
I do. I feel really good about it. Anything that, all those things I mentioned, a year ago, none of it would be true, and we'd be, just going about life, not having a whole lot going on. But the fact that the interest now, I guess we're approaching, or 3.5 months out from the show, having come out, and I still feel like we're picking up momentum. Not so much with social media interest and engagement. That just kind of simmered down a little bit, thankfully, because that was probably one of the more overwhelming aspects of what I've been dealing with over the past few months. But yeah, it's it's very encouraging and exciting, and we have a lot of different things we're juggling, and not only me. I mean, I do certain things and I talk to certain people, and then we have 5 or 6 or 7 other people who are juggling different things, and we're working on rejuvenating and upgrading Amy's website, the amybradleyismissing.com website. So that's going to kind of be brought into, up to date, I would say, into the 21st century, with a lot of different capabilities that the other website doesn't have. So it's just a list of things that are all positive. Of course, there's still that negative side of the internet, specifically, where these certain characters online are hell-bent on coming after me and my family, and just being antagonistic contrarians to the nth degree, and sympathizing with the prime suspects and that kind of thing. So all that's still going on. We're working on finding out who they are, and there's been some suspicion about whether these characters are from the islands or involved with some of the suspects themselves, or maybe they are the suspect. Or so there's a lot of talk going on about that, and we're working on.
But that's been consistent, that harassment from certain online operators.
And
interesting.
There's probably 3 or 4 that stick out to me the most, but there's also several others that their names have been or their user addresses have been provided to certain people that I'm hopeful we can find out where they're coming from and who they are. There's been language used. One of the things from one of the characters online, they made mention of my mom and dad. And apparently in Grenada and other Caribbean islands, that's a very popular way to say mom. And, so it's just a couple of little interesting things, and so hopefully we get to tell everybody who they are shortly.
Wow, that's interesting. Talk about, we were just discussing a couple minutes ago. Well, first of all, while we're on the topic of bad actors online, I know that you've also had to spend considerable time discrediting some of the publications that have been out there recently. And that must take a lot of time too, because I have seen, I obviously stay in contact with you regularly and ask for updates. And then, a couple of times these articles have actually caught me off guard. I mean, I've saw it and been like, Brad didn't tell me that, they discovered X, Y, and Z. And then I kind of have to catch myself and,
I thought the same thing when I read the articles. I'm like, where's
nobody
this?
told me.
Who's this? So, you get excited at the first glance, and it's like, oh my God.
Once you get a layer,
forward,
once you get a layer or two down in the article, you realize there's really nothing, no meat on the bone. But how many times have you had to sort of say to a reporter or someone calling, no, that's not true. No, that didn't happen.
It's got to be 100.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's within the past 2 weeks. There was an article that came out in the Hollywood Reporter, and I spoke to the journalist who put that article out. I asked him who his source was, who he wouldn't share with me, and I respect that. But there's been some question as to who the heck he's talking to, because nobody on our team. We've asked everybody, unless we got a mole in the group that's trying to stir up some trouble. Nobody knows anything about it. So there was some mention of the story where Elizabeth Lewis, who unfortunately we still have not yet been able to find. She's the third eyewitness who testified in the grand jury that she saw Amy in yellow come off the elevator from inside the Viking Lounge. And later, I think it was either the following day or the day after Amy's disappearance, she was back in there. A young girl came out from behind the bar yelling, "Senorita kidnap." And then the bartender, who we have since found and interviewed, who denies everything, basically forced her back behind the bar away from, where Elizabeth Lewis was apparently sitting. So this new article says that girl has come forward and has spoken to investigators. I don't know who's investigators, because we don't know who she is. We don't know where she is. I don't think there's any truth to it, and we still don't know where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, there was an AI generated YouTube video. Now the reporter denies ever having seen the video, but the claims in his article, which came out the Monday preceding his Thursday article online, which we already had to refute repeatedly, kind of echoed the same claims in that video. So I don't know. I haven't heard from the guy since, but yeah, there was a claim in there about that. There's another claim about Amy having children or a child, and I'd have to say that's purely speculative and unsubstantiated for sure, unless someone knows something I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another piece of information about an IP hit that I would rather not have been made public, and I won't repeat it again here, but that there is some truth to that, but I'll leave that there.
Mm-hmm.
There's another article that came out a couple days ago, and I think, again, it was an AI-generated thing, probably prompted by somebody who doesn't have anything better to do, that says that there was another girl who had been trafficked, who had spent some time with Amy, who has come forward and had Amy's silver college ring from Longwood in a box that Amy had given to her, and all this stuff. And it goes on to claim my parents are different ages than they are, much older, and it goes as far as to say my parents and our attorney have come out and made a statement. Not true. So,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of time online, not only on my platforms on like X and TikTok, but on our Facebook groups and on Instagram pages that other people run.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it creates a lot of excitement, which I think is a good thing, because it sparks a lot of conversation and
Right.
gets people kind of pulled back into it where they may have fallen away,
Right.
and had nothing come about. So I think there's some silver lining to those kinds of things, as far as maintaining people's interest. And I think the most encouraging thing is that when something like that happens, the amount of response that it gets kind of tells us how interested people still are, even
Gives
if
you
they're
a little
off.
bit of a litmus test on. Yeah.
Because it really it generates a lot of traffic, and it's unfortunate because it detracts from our ongoing efforts. It takes a lot of time, and it's very misleading, misinformation that gets a lot lot of fooled.
Right. Well, inversely, there have been some things that have popped up that you've discovered since the documentary. One of which involves an interview that we did here on the podcast as well with a guy named Chris Fenwick, who was the videographer, editor who shot well, he wasn't a videographer, he was an editor.
Yeah,
He's very clear on that. Yeah, I'm going to get a phone call. Chris, I know you're calling me. Yes, he's an editor. But he had said in our interview, he had talked about deleted footage of Amy, and sort of enlighten us on what's come out on that.
Yeah, so Chris Fenwick is the video editor who was on the boat. His videographer, Bob, was the one who shot the footage of Amy and Yellow dancing in the Viking Lounge that morning. He did an interview with you, and he's documented, I don't know if he showed you his written explanation of events, from way back. But ever since Amy's disappearance, he has thought, and so have we, because I think of the story that he's told us, that the ship's video editor, Steve Smith, was asked by ship security to scrub any images of Amy from his tapes, in my opinion, so as not to show her with any crew members that might cause some liability problems. Now, Chris Fenwick since located Steve Smith and they've had some back and forth, and I've got all the screenshots.
Which is fascinating, because when we talked to him, he hadn't.
He didn't know. I remember him
we
showing
showed
the
his picture and said, if anybody's seen him,
yeah, and I can share with you their conversations. So,
and to find someone named Steve Smith, how did he do that?
I don't know. I guess.
I mean, I know how he did that. He is a dog with a bone. That guy. So
he got in touch with Steve Smith, and through their conversations, and I think Chris kind of slow played it a little bit instead of just like jumping on the bone. But he eventually got to bring up, hey, do you remember when I came into your room that morning and you were editing footage, and you told me that you had been asked to remove any footage of Amy from your tapes? He was like, yeah, I remember that. And he said Chris said something about security, and Steve said, oh no, it wasn't security, it was everybody's favorite cruise director. And since we found that out, I went on my social media platforms on X and called him out, and gave him an opportunity to give an explanation as to why that would be, and haven't heard anything from him. We've been unable to contact him after multiple attempts with no responses. But yeah, so apparently Steve Smith never spoke to security, but that's one interesting piece that has come out since we last spoke.
Yep. And then Oscar Alexander, Yellow's roommate. We've had some development there too.
Yeah. So after our interview, and I'll play it for you later. Oscar Alexander was Alistair Douglas, or Yellow's roommate on the cruise, and he was quiet as a church mouse for 27 years. Never heard anything from him, and all of a sudden, I guess several months, probably 6 or 8 months after Yellow's interview with James Renner, where Yellow gives many provably false statements and timelines and all that kind of thing, Oscar decided, or Yellow and Oscar together decided it would be a good idea for him to come out and make a statement. And in his statement, it's not a full interview like Yellow's is. It's a 3-minute clip. On YouTube, there's Oscar Alexander's profile picture from his Facebook page. It's not a video of him speaking. So we can't confirm 100% it was actually him.
That's weird.
I assume it was.
Yeah.
And I don't know why James Renner didn't include his entire interview. So Oscar says that, in line with what Yellow says, that that Amy and Yellow met that night. They talked a little bit. Amy came up and I came up and we requested some songs, and all true. And after their set was over around midnight, they packed up their things and went back to the room. Oscar states that they were both in their room by 1 o'clock, and that. Which we know isn't true. I mean, we have
from the key card, right?
Yeah, Yellow's key card data shows that he goes into his room at 3:35, same time as I did.
Right.
And Yellow told me the following morning that I was with her until 3:30. Now he says he's in his room at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oscar says that they were also in their room at 1 o'clock, but that security knocked on their cabin door somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m. to search the room for Amy. And, obviously Amy wasn't reported missing until after 7 a.m. So, another provably false claim that contradicts what Yellow said. If you remember, Yellow said that the hotel manager called his room at 7 a.m., never made any mention of security knocking on their door, which is a pretty significant event. You probably wouldn't leave out of your own interview if you were telling the story. And we since found in some of the security report pieces that we have that the ship's chief security officer did not inform the hotel manager until 9 a.m. So I don't know how he calls Yellow 2 hours earlier. And then something like 12 or some years ago, Yellow gave an interview for CNN, and he says that they called him at 6 o'clock in the morning. So, it's times all over the place. And I've had times off 15, 20 minutes here or there, and I think that's fine. But Yellow and Oscar should have talked it through a little more before they decided to speak publicly, I think.
And then lastly, Barbados. Tell me about what's going on there.
So we have some people in Barbados, and they've been extremely helpful, tracking down leads, ruling things out, checking out places and people and things that have been sent to us, and all of that kind of thing. So, that's still ongoing. There's a couple of things that they are actually actively working on that I won't go into detail about, but Barbados continues to be kind of, I guess, on the forefront of interest. Although, who knows if Amy's still out there where she is. I mean, there's so many islands and so many unnamed islands in different places, and we still get hit, my family, about why don't we move down there, and where are we going to go?
Right.
I don't know whether to go to Barbados or Curacao or Aruba or Grenada or St. Lucia or St. Martin or Venezuela.
Right.
You pick where you want us to live, and we'll start there, I guess.
Right.
But there's still some things going on in Barbados that we're working on, and hopefully, I think I still maintain that the only way we get to Amy or to what happened to her is if someone comes forward. I go back to somebody knows something. I think several people know something, and I'm hoping that if the conversation can continue on social media and otherwise, and people continue to share and ask questions and repost, we're potentially one reshare away from it reaching the right person that hasn't somehow seen or heard of what's going on here recently. So we're still dependent on that person or those people to come forward and do the right thing.
It seems that the pressure is, like you said, mounting, which like you said, if there is something to be released, that pressure is what you need to get it to come out.
I hope it's the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
Some people have questioned whether or not it's too much pressure, and if Amy were still out there, the people that are around her would
lock down,
would do something about it.
Yeah.
It might not be a good thing, but at this point, we don't. The spotlight is on. We don't have any choice at this point. So
the spotlight is certainly on. Well, that is a good point to take a break. We're gonna do that, and we'll be right back. If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, from a legal, legislative, sort of actionable on the government side of things, you've been dealing with the federal government and you've been dealing with the state government. So let's talk about your sort of time in Washington and what you guys have been working on there.
Yeah, so on September 4th, we went up to D.C. with our team and met with Senator Grassley's team. I don't know whether to call them his attorneys or his staffers or what you call them, but we met with his people and presented our case with all the certain asks that we are hopeful to achieve, and left that meeting feeling very encouraged, much more so than when we walked into that room. Since then, Grassley's team has sent internal communications to the federal level, I believe, and they haven't shared with us because it's, I guess, a confidential matter to them what exactly the letter said or who exactly it went to, but I believe it was to DOJ officials, FBI officials, and DHS officials, or HSI, and the ask being that our family has long requested access to the FBI case files that we've never been privy to, because we feel like it would not only fill in some of our gaps, but it would show us what they have done and what they never did.
Right.
So we're hopeful that Grassley's team's efforts will result in some action there.
Do they have to technically close the case in order to give you the file?
I don't know. I mean, we've requested that if that is required, then do so.
Then close the case
Yeah.
and give us the file, and then we could reopen it, right?
Yeah, and I know, I don't think we're going to get access to the grand jury testimony, although we've since been in touch with the assistant U.S. attorney who called that grand jury and spoken to him about kind of the same thing, is that, it's very difficult. I think the judge that presided himself would be the one who could release those, but I'm not hopeful that that's going to come out.
Have you ever seen anything from that file?
No, the only thing I've seen from the FBI are basically email communications that pertain to information that my mom or dad provided them.
Mm-hmm.
So in response to stuff that came from our side, there'd be some back and forth about it.
Right.
But we don't know, essentially we don't have a list of people they questioned or a list of people they polygraphed or a list of places that they've been to, or we don't know.
And they claim the case is still open because...
Don't know.
Okay. Because there's not anyone actively investigating from the FBI.
Don't know. They,
Yeah.
Again, they don't communicate with us. So we recently received an email, I think a couple of days ago, from the lead agent requesting, now this is 98 days after we last spoke, when there was supposed to be a meeting set up in August that never happened. And much as, this has been our experience over the years, as a lack of communication and follow through from, and I'm not singling out the FBI as an agency as a whole, but certainly I think the agents that have been in charge of our case have been a disappointment to us. And maybe they've done more, to be fair, than we know about, and we're unfairly accusing them of not doing what they should have done. Maybe they did, but they just have never told us anything. There's a new agent that's going to be assigned to the case because Agent Sheridan got a promotion of some sort. You remember the two African American, I don't know if they're American, two black ladies that Amy was talking to in the matching uniforms on the boat the night before?
Yes.
So we were previously told by an FBI agent named Carrie Gleischer that we know who those women are. They refused to ever tell us who they were. The new agent, when they were recently having a conversation with our investigator, said, "What, two black women?" So, you have a new agent coming in that has no idea, 27 years worth of information he's got to learn. And I guess that would be true if a new team took the case anyway. Everybody would have to kind of start from the beginning. And we hope that that's, something that's going to happen.
It's kind of interesting that they're putting a new agent on it. Why? Because, I know the one got promoted, but if they're not actively investigating,
and I don't, and again,
they might.
Maybe
be.
they are. They just don't tell us anything. So, to answer your first question, I don't know whether or not our access to the files is predicated on the case being closed. If we get access to the files without the case being closed, I'm sure they'd be heavily redacted. And we'd be like, well, thanks, we can't even see what.
Yeah, just
what
as a
saying.
journalist, I know trying to get things, through open records that are any type of case file that's still pending is almost always a no.
Yeah, and our FOIA requests have been denied and appealed and so forth. So, and I don't know why the case, if they're not doing anything, they're certainly not reinterrogating Yellow and Oscar. They're certainly not traveling to Grenada, or if they are, I guess I have to continue to be fair. We just don't know about it. But a lot of people online have speculated that perhaps the case is kept in an open status to prevent us from having access to the files, for whatever reason that might be. To maybe find out what they didn't do.
Right.
That they should have done, but I don't know.
It certainly helped from an investigative standpoint, though. I can see your perspective of, okay, well, now we know we can cross this off the list as, not a possibility, and they never explored this, that is a possibility.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how are you to know what's been done, or like where to start?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where's a good place to start?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that effort ongoing on the federal level. You've spoken additionally with the Attorney General's office here in Virginia.
Yeah, we actually met first with Winsome Sears, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears' office. She actually was the only one out of everyone we've spoken to that reached out to us, offering her help. So we had a meeting with her and her team. They essentially said that from a state level, they recommended that we go federal to federal. So they recommended we get in touch with Representative McGuire, who we since have. I spoke to his assistant this afternoon, and they're considering drafting a letter of the same sort to the same type people as a kind of a multifaceted
multi-pronged
approach. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So we met with Sears, and she was extremely nice. Pointed us in a certain direction, but really didn't give us much to go on. Didn't offer to write a letter herself, or like the other people. And the Attorney General's office, we met with Deputy Attorney General and the Director of External Affairs with his office, and they are still in the process of revising and drafting a letter to DOJ and FBI requesting similar things.
Might get more traction after the election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, with the government shutdown and then the election in Virginia, and the letter, I think, was held up quite a bit when it was sent to Youngkin's team, and it got kind of stifled in legal counsel and all that kind of stuff. So that's still not, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with all of that, but hopefully the letter goes out by the end of the week, and certainly I would expect that if it's going to be delayed anymore, it would be after November 4th.
And talk about a little bit about the legislative actions that you are looking at broadly down the road, the Amy alerts, and then also the independent security on chips.
Yeah, so there's three main ones in my mind that we'd like to have mandated, because we all know that the cruise industry is not going to electively choose to do these things. One would be, and I think it's common sense, there was a gal on TikTok that came up with Amy alerts, and I think we spoke about this on our first interview. So very similar to Amber alerts. So if a child is missing, everybody's cell phone goes off, and with the information. And Amy alerts would be on cruise ships. If someone goes missing, every single person on that boat, their cell phone goes off with pictures and last seen wearing with this person, all this kind of information. Because when Amy went missing, we not only didn't have that, we had, in my opinion, an effort to conceal what had happened from the passengers. We were told, quote, they wouldn't make an announcement because it would disturb the other passengers.
You didn't want to wake anyone up. It was early. Right. I do remember all of that.
So all that kind of stuff. And, to have some sort of standard operating procedure, which the captain admitted to us they did not have for a missing person at that time. Wow. Which I find hard to believe. But to mandate an actual procedure where that ship gets locked in place, gangways don't go down, nobody gets off, and everybody's made aware of what's happening. A search is performed before anybody's allowed to leave the boat, all that kind of thing. So that Amy alert would be a huge one. There's a petition on change.org that's, I think, garnered over 20,000 signatures. Should be 1,020,000 signatures, in my opinion. I don't know who doesn't think that's a
good idea. Right.
So I would encourage everybody to go to change.org or to go to my social media, X, TikTok, the Linktree, and those platforms, the Facebook group, the Instagram page. All that information is there. Please sign the petition, and we're trying to push that through our efforts with federal and all that kind of stuff ultimately. Secondly, we talked a lot about the ship's security, and people don't understand that the security on these boats is hired by
the cruise line.
Mm-hmm. They're trained by the cruise line, and it's long been my opinion that their main job is to protect the cruise line. There's a lot of, if you look at, there's a podcast out there called My Ship's Story, I think, and there's a creator on TikTok who shares a lot of these podcast clips from ex-cruise employees and all these kind of people that shed a lot of light on what went on in the 90s on these cruise ships and the bribery and customs officials and all this kind of crazy stuff. But the security needs to be independent of the cruise line. So I believe there should be a mandate or legislation that mandates independent security or independent police be on these ships to protect the passengers, because I don't believe that that's in the ship's security's interest. And then, not lastly, but thirdly, I'd say, not only do you have problems in international waters and jurisdictional issues with sovereign countries that these ships take, not only our citizens, but citizens from other countries too, they fly foreign flags. They're headquartered in the United States.
Yeah.
But whether it be for reasons where they can circumvent taxes or the United States authorities, because whatever ship you're on, whatever flag they fly, you are subject to the laws of that country. And then there's all kinds of, red tape and jurisdictional problems with our authorities being effective in those scenarios. So I believe that any cruise ship that is headquartered in the United States should be forced to fly an American flag, so our authorities have the ability to investigate the crimes, which still in large part are not required to be reported by these industries. And there needs to be some changes, and they're going to have to be forced on these companies, because they're obviously not going to do it voluntarily.
Yeah. I mean, I until reporting on this story with you, had not realized how resistant the cruise line industry is to any changes. They're completely resistant to things that are not beneficial to their, companies. It's really hard. I mean, the lobbying, we spoke to, another great person you recommended us, Jamie. Yeah. And she kind of went through even just laws surrounding shared information about ex-employees. She said it's a very common pattern that, some incident happens on one cruise line, the person gets terminated, never charged with anything, but everybody knows there was something bad that happened, and then
they don't have to tell the next company.
Yeah, 6 months later, they're on a different cruise line, and they're, back in the same scenarios with, the same type of situations.
Yeah.
So, but she said, it's powerful, it's well funded, they've got a huge lobbying arm, and it's really hard to get those changes through.
Yeah, I know, and I think it was in your interview where she said that, her and her team went to Washington. They weren't allowed to bring their attorneys, but the cruise lines surely had theirs there.
Yeah.
And they had certain asks, like, peepholes on all the doors. Right. So if someone knocks on your door, who's standing on the other side of it. And they said, well, no, it's maritime, and it's you can't really drill holes in the doors and all this stuff. And they requested, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things that were all denied for various reasons. And then it turns out that the late Elijah Cummings passed some legislation that mandated all those changes. So again, I think that's going to have to happen in this case too, if anything changes.
Well, I do know that the pressure, at least for that purpose, it is useful. I mean that's when legislation needs to get through, the pressure of, and there is certainly a lot of pressure surrounding this case. So, we'll see. But yeah, those seem like some pretty common sense ideas.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're at another good point to take a break. We're going to come back and do another check-in on where things are with your case in just a second. If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So this is now a much more consuming part of your life. I'm sure you've been always thinking of Amy, but now are actively on a daily basis spending good portion of your day, really, talking about her, talking about this. What are you sensing emotionally has happened to you, if anything, by going down this road and by being where you are? Has it stirred you in a way?
Yeah. It's weird. Since the show came out, it is very reminiscent of the first 3 months after she disappeared. The reliving and recounting and retelling every single detail, trying to get help from all these different entities that don't seemingly help. Very frustrating. Is a feeling, it's hard to say there's a feeling of, there's a feeling of helplessness, and we can do all we can do, but I think, as I've said many times, somebody out there knows something, and we're largely dependent on that person or those people coming forward and finally saying what, telling us what they know. But, it's been a reliving of the nightmare. People over the course of the many interviews that I've done I recall things, you relive it enough and you're like, another piece comes in and, I forgot about that. And, my mom will remind me after, like, for instance, our interview, and I said something incorrect, and she'll, tell me, what the real, and then I have to, next time I do an interview, I'll fix that part. And, we've kind of been putting it together and fine tuning all the details and that kind of thing. But it's hard to, the first several weeks I had trouble sleeping. I couldn't fall asleep. My mind wouldn't stop. That sense has improved a lot. But yeah, it's been very emotional. I think we haven't had as much hope as we have now in a long, long time. So the negatives that come with it, there's also the positives, and I don't know whether the hope is a real intuitive type of thing that family members share, or whether it's a result of what living without closure for 27 years does to you. And I don't know the psychology of that, but yeah, it's been a really interesting time, difficult but positive, and I'm still going to be forever grateful for this what I feel like is one last opportunity to find her, or find out what happened, or hold somebody responsible, or something, affect some positive change in regard to not only the cruise lines, but the laws that apply to them, and how that can hopefully lessen the chances this happens to somebody else's daughter or sister. And so it's a lot of pressure, and I hope I've done a fair job at it. I do the best I can, and I know I've not been perfect with every detail and everything I've done or said online. I'm a little bit of rage bait out there that I probably responded to a little more poorly than I should have. But at some point you kind of reach a limit for people's stupidity. And it's hard to be the bigger person in all. All the cases.
It's a lot. I wonder, you were mentioning this is both sort of painful and hopeful at the same time. And, I was actually thinking about you recently because I have a daughter and a son that are 3 years apart, and my son is 3 and he has trouble sleeping. And he has started to go into my daughter's room and fall asleep on the floor in her room. And he'll sleep comfortably right there. He'll just take his blanket. He'll go into her bedroom. We have an old house. We'll hear the door creak open. He's 3 years old. He'll lay down with his blanket. And the next morning we find him on the floor, her in the bed. We've since pulled out a trundle to be more humane about the situation. But I thought of you instantly because I was thinking about, that's his safe space next to her. Mm-hmm. He's scared of the dark, or he's scared of waking up alone, and he goes there because he's safe with her. Yeah. And I was just thinking, I literally thought to myself, I'm like, the powerful connection between siblings, it doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. That's as vital to you as a parent, really. I mean, it's when you've grown up with somebody like that.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think there's a picture, and I'll share it with you before I go today, of a portrait that was supposed to be of just me, or my parents took us in when we were very young to get individual pictures of us. So Amy takes her pictures, and it's my turn, and I'm not having it, right? And so I refuse to behave until Amy's right beside me. Mm-hmm. And in the picture, I have my hands on her hands, and you can tell she's kind of there, like, okay, I'm here, go ahead.
Right.
It's really sweet. But it's
sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's very comforting to me that regardless of what comes from this, I did my best, and it's hard, but I'm not going to stop doing it because I owe it to her, and since we don't, it's hard to make sense of it to people who don't understand after 27 years why we don't give it up. And it's simply because we don't, even though we don't know exactly what happened, and we don't know where she is or if she's still alive, we haven't ever had any evidence that she isn't. There's no body, there's no evidence, there's no piece of clothing, there's no nothing. And so we have to go forward assuming that she's out there waiting for us to save her. Mm-hmm. And I think anything short than the effort that everybody on our team, including me, is making is honoring her, and we can't, and nor will we stop trying as hard as we can, whether it makes sense to people or not.
Yeah, I think to some people they're thinking, oh, this is torture to have to go through all of this. But what I think they're missing is that this brings you closer to her in a way. Yeah, does. And it probably feels kind of good to be talking about her all the time, and it feels good to have everybody interested and
this has brought forward a lot of personal stories from friends, and we've had pictures sent to us that we've never seen of her and that kind of thing, and that's always a really cool thing.
That has to be touching.
It's very meaningful to all of us, what's happening, and not only the outreach from people around the world, but the amount of time and energy and selflessness that complete strangers have put into this. And I include people on our team, not just content creators on TikTok and things. That there's some really valuable assets out there that have spent hours upon hours upon hours of researching and putting together content that they're doing whatever they can to help us. And then you have those that aren't so helpful,
that have too much time on their hands. Yeah. How's your mom doing?
Good. She I say good. She's taken up her old exercise routine.
Oh, good.
Unfortunately, my parents over the past several years have lost 3 dogs, and they were tied down specifically with one of them who was ill for a long time, completely blind. It was a 24-hour job. They couldn't leave the house at the same time. They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't travel. So now that that they're freed up, it's almost odd for them to say they're going somewhere or going out of town, but they're getting to live a little bit more life that they've been kept from over the past several years with the dog issues. But Mom, she's out walking miles and miles and losing some weight and feeling good, and
that's wonderful to hear that.
And although reliving all of this has been obviously really hard on her, again, the positivity that comes from all the different aspects of what's happening when so many years went by without anything has been good, I think.
I just picture her in that office, like working harder than ever, because as you said, she just was
all day yesterday. She was talking to all kind of different people.
Yeah. But she probably feels fulfilled by that too. And
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, and I think all of us, it's kind of goes back to every opportunity we've ever had. We know we can look back and say that we did absolutely everything, and even since the show came out, there's not really one thing that we've left on the table that hadn't gotten our full attention. So we're going to continue with it. So all you out there that that don't like us for whatever reason, fly a kite, I guess. But we're gonna keep doing what we're doing.
Well, I know there was some things that you can't tell us and some things that, are off the table for this interview, but I hope if there is a time when they become able to be shared, you'll come back and talk to us again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a tremendous interest nationally, but also locally, because so many people know your family. I can't tell you how many times I've been out in Richmond and someone said, "Oh, I watched that interview because I went to high school with him," or "I know his dad from here," or "I know his." I mean, there's a lot of connection out there, specifically in this area, and just to put your anxieties at ease, everyone has said lovely things to me about your family. So maybe these are the Richmond folks, though. Those who actually know you.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope you'll come back and keep us updated.
I will,
Brad, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Untold is a production of WTVR CBS 6, executive produced by Mike Bergazzi and Catie Beck, directed by Nick Maharaj and Brock Taylor, and edited by April Harshman. Follow the show on Instagram at Untold_WTVR.